So thank you for joining our session today on the Metaverse for All, the importance of an open metaverse. I'm your speaker, Matt White from Berkeley Synthetic. Berkeley Synthetic is a research organization. We're focused on applications of AI in simulated spaces. Our research principally deals with modeling of physics, natural phenomena, and behaviors from the real world in a simulated space. And we're using the state-of-the-art in artificial intelligence to accomplish this. The name Berkeley Synthetic comes from the 18th century philosopher George Berkeley, whose immaterialism posited that everything is an idea, a perception, and that we are all living in a construct of our creator's mind, a simulation, if you will. And synthetic comes from synthetic reality, the idea of synthesizing the natural world and its primitive building blocks and replicating them in a simulated environment. So you'll be drinking from the fire hose today, as I'm going to touch on a lot of topics. But depending on how much time we have and how well we progress today, I may not have time to answer questions at the end of the session. And if I don't, I would encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn. My hope with today's presentation is to get you to think critically about how we will build the foundation of the open metaverse. One that's inclusive, one that follows ethics and empowers creators to build anything they want. With that, let's get started. So ask 10 different people what the metaverse is, and you're likely to get 10 different answers. And that's just because the metaverse is an imagined space, one that doesn't exist yet. And anyone telling you to the contrary is trying to sell you tokens or pipe dreams. So will the metaverse resemble Neil Stephenson's 100-meter wide road, The Street, and Snow Crash? Or will it be more akin to Oasis from Ernest Cline's Ready Player One? Or perhaps it will be synthetic reality, like the Wachowskis' The Matrix, a true-to-life simulation indistinguishable from the real world. The truth is, we just don't know yet. But what most innovators and thought leaders agree on is that it will be a 3D virtual space where users interact with one another, engage in social activities, and conduct commerce. It will be interacted with through the use of human-computer interfaces like VR goggles, conventional 2D displays like smartphones, and potentially down the road, brain-computer interfaces. It will embrace decentralization and empower creators, give them agency, spur new innovations, and create new ways to connect with one another in a three-dimensional reality. Many simulation theorists like myself believe that the metaverse will eventually evolve into what we call the great simulation. If you're not familiar with the term, please pick up a copy of Rizwan Burke's book, The Simulation Hypothesis, or have a read of Nick Bostrom's Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? Unlike the metaverse, it will not just be a three-dimensional rendered space intended for first-person consumption, but rather a decentralized, massive, online multi-user simulation that is persistent and alive. It would be non-deterministic and represented through information and interaction, not just cool graphics. A plane of existence powered by developments in artificial intelligence, decentralized technologies, and giving rise to the birth of a new economy, one that will one day exceed that of the real world. A space where content, inventions, and creatives are developed in the metaverse and not for the metaverse. As a comparison, VR is the virtual world observed from a viewer's perspective, where SR, or synthetic reality, persists regardless of observance. So plants grow, the wind blows, nails rust, the sun sets, but not programmatically, not to satisfy a narrative or appease the observer, but naturally, as natural as it occurs in our world. But we are a long ways off from the great simulation. And so for now, let's just focus on the metaverse. As the architects and engineers of the metaverse, we will be tasked with building the framework, the engines, the composable primitives that the metaverse will be built on. In this presentation, I will highlight what it will take to build the foundations of an open metaverse so that its users and inhabitants can coexist peacefully, respectfully, and build worlds limited only by their imaginations. So I wanted to start today with a view of the high-level layers of the metaverse architecture to help frame the challenges that lie ahead. This architecture breaks the layers of the metaverse into logical components based on functionality, with each layer building upon and abstracting the layers below it. Because we are short on time today, I won't be able to go into too much detail here. The metaverse architecture is composed of 4 distinct layers. Starting at the bottom, we have the infrastructure layer, which is composed of network, compute, and storage sublayers. The network layer is comprised of the internet backbone as well as mobile, satellite, and terrestrial access network technologies, along with LANs and PANs. On top of the network sublayer, we have the compute and storage, which are the physical servers stacked with CPUs, GPUs, and ephemeral and long-term storage. Next, we have the environment layer. This is the layer that abstracts the hardware and provides decentralized compute, data storage, and metaverse engines, along with services like self-sovereign identity, general purpose blockchains, and inter-metaspace communication interfaces. On top of that, we have the creator layer. This is where we have applications like metagames, social scoring, digital marketplaces, digital twins, and AI agents. We also have digital assets like avatars, cryptocurrencies, possessions, along with ownership, attribution, and monetization of assets. And finally, we have the perception layer, which includes rendering engines, augmented workplaces, and user spaces. It also includes human-machine interfaces like real-world devices like sensors and objects like the physical embodiments of digital twins, and sensor-laden smart spaces like retail, smart home, and smart cities. So as the architects of the open metaverse, we need to be good stewards. We need to create a space that provides the largest degrees of individual and technical freedoms. We cannot possibly know what the metaverse will evolve into, so it's incumbent upon us to build a foundation that is free of opinion and bias. It should be built with primitives, applications of the fundamental laws of nature, modeled behaviors, composable objects, upon which further layers of abstraction can be developed and further innovations can be devised. Open access to the metaverse plumbing will be essential to allow developers, creators, builders, and communities to innovate in the space. The metaverse will be in a constant state of evolution, and its inhabitants will decide its future. But don't get me wrong, there will still need to be guardrails, security, data privacy, governance, and so forth. But these will have to be built into the core foundation of the metaverse and enforced by code or communities. If we do not start building a strong and open foundation built with composable primitives when architecting the open metaverse, we will run the risk of limiting the capabilities and limiting the capabilities and creativity of its users. So what does it mean to be open? Is it just the software stack, the interfaces, file formats? Openness really goes beyond the conventional open source and open standards when we're talking about things in the context of the metaverse. There is no doubt we need open standards and open source, but openness doesn't just include the technical domain, it also includes the social and ethical domains. The open metaverse should embrace full transparency and freedom of choice, put control in the hands of the users and communities, and shift balance away from big tech. It should be open to all and accept all. It should allow the community to drive the future of the metaverse without constraints and influence. In the metaverse economy, there should be an open market with creator attribution and digital asset protection. The exchange of goods and services should be free from intermediaries and have no counterparty risk. But to get there, we will need to address three principal challenges. So the technical challenges in building out the metaverse are exceedingly large. David Reed, Associate Professor of AI and Spatial Computing at Liverpool Hope University, has said that if you look at the amount of data collected today from the World Wide Web and compared it to what will be collected in the metaverse, there's just no comparison. Intel's Raja Koduri claims that we will need to see 1,000 times increase in computational efficiency from today's state of the art in order to power persistent and immersive computing at scale and accessible by billions of humans in real time. So if that hasn't deterred you, congratulations. We still have to make strides to improve immersion and realism, improve accuracy and precision of physics engines, and develop systems that will support the decentralized metaverse, including digital asset management, self-sovereign identity, and consensus-based social scoring algorithms. We also need to develop the standards, software, and APIs that will comprise the metaverse foundation so that builders can innovate and build metaspaces using foundational primitives. So I won't go further into the technical challenges today. They're definitely large. I will save those for another talk. But we also need to be cognizant of the social impact in building the metaverse. including information bubbles, combating misinformation, government censorship, the safety of others, and toxic behaviors. There are also socioeconomic considerations like the digital divide, marginalized communities, and accessibility, to name a few. We do not want the toxic effects that we have seen pervasive in social networks to replicate themselves in the metaverse. We also want to protect against behaviors that reflect current societal paradigms, such as social stratification and concentration of power and wealth in the metaverse. There are also numerous ethical considerations, such as information privacy and security, including biometric data from wearables, as well as tracking and sensor data generated from real-world people and places. There are issues around censorship, adult content, illegal activities, and the dissemination of illegal and copyrighted materials. We also have to consider, what are the laws of the metaverse? How will they be enforced in a decentralized space? Will the metaverse just be a place of complete chaos and lawlessness? These are just a few of the considerations we must be cognizant of as architects of the open metaverse. So what can we do? Undoubtedly, there's a lot to consider, a lot to unpack in building the open metaverse, between the technical, social, and ethical considerations. But it should not be lost on us. There are steps we can take to address issues in earnest before they get ahead of us. It will take considerable time and innovation to address many of the technical issues, especially around scalability. However, we should begin by addressing the more immediate technical, social, and ethical challenges that we have control of today. As a starting point, I would suggest that we focus on 3 principal areas that will help position us to build the open metaverse. 1, collaboration and cooperation across industries, technical domains, and generations. 2, rethink the approach to standards development and adoption. And 3, employ a human-first design approach to laying the foundation for the open metaverse. So no one company will build the metaverse, nor will a single industry lead its development, nor will one particular generation be responsible for its grand design. We need to break down industry silos, move away from a focus on profits, intellectual property rights, and patents, and work in the spirit of openness that facilitates communication and cooperation. So I do recognize that my previous statement will not be popular, but we will still need to ask ourselves if a particular innovation would be best served to release to the public domain for wider adoption, where it can then undergo enhancement and fuel further innovations in the greater metaverse community. Currently, a lot of conversations on the metaverse are taking place in walled garden industry verticals within associations and communities that are specifically focused on gaming and media and entertainment, telecommunications, consumer electronics, crypto, and DeFi, and so forth. We need to break these walls down and come together to ideate, innovate, and develop the foundation for the open metaverse. There's absolutely no reason why industries, companies, individuals, DAOs, and communities cannot come together to co-develop standards and software for the open metaverse. Without a high degree of collaboration, cooperation, and agreement, the dream of an open metaverse is unlikely to come to fruition. Now, it's a foregone conclusion that we will need universally accepted standards to create the open metaverse. Metaspaces will communicate with one another in order to share state information. Users need to be able to move digital assets like avatars across metaspaces and metagames. We need to support universal social scoring and be able to make in metaspace purchases, as well as to bind physical to virtual assets to build on different metaverse engines, and the list goes on. We need open standards, but we should not develop them in the classical method of industry vertical standards bodies that require members to pay sizable membership fees just to have a seat at the table. Nor should great ideas meet their fate by the vote of a siloed industry committee. Nor will we be able to make decisions solely by use of token voting and decentralized autonomous organizations. Decisions are rarely binary, and collaboration and iteration on novel ideas is a necessity. Rather, we will need to employ an open hybrid model, one that brings together leaders from different industries, companies, communities, and individual industry leaders. Participation should not be encumbered by exclusivity or being part of the in crowd. We need to create an open community of motivated individuals who are willing to put in the work and vote with their code and contributions. Ultimately, we need the best and brightest to work together to define the standards that will provide the foundation of the open metaverse. Today, there isn't complete alignment on what the metaverse should be, and there will be plenty of disagreements on the direction of which direction we should take. By consequence, it will be an uphill battle on defining the universally accepted specifications for interfaces, transport protocols, encryption algorithms, container formats, identity management, and so on. In designing specifications, we should be modular and as extensible as possible with our designs, so that we do not hamper the ability of those who build in the metaverse from innovating themselves and reaching peak creative potential. Certification still has a role for particular elements in the metaverse architecture. This makes a lot of sense for hardware in order to ensure interoperability and functionality. However, it really doesn't hold weight as you move further up the stack. The magnitude for which software certification would need to take place and the barrier to entry it creates in the open metaverse is a position that is just not tenable. So we also need a strong approach to design. Human-first design combines elements of ethics with human-centered design. In human-centered design thinking, you go through the cycle of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and iterate. In the spirit of design thinking for social change, you must also practice respecting human rights, respecting human effort, and respecting human experience in the design process. So respecting human rights entails protecting your civil liberties, reduces inequality, and benefits democracy. This entails decentralization, peer-to-peer, zero knowledge, self-sovereign identity, and end-to-end encryption. And it requires open source, interoperable, accessible, and sustainable technologies. Technology that respects human effort are functional, convenient, reliable, and extensible, favoring modularity, transparency, openness, and facilitate creativity. The human experience entails bringing happiness, beauty, magic, and delight. They are designs that just work, they're intuitive, and all around make you feel better. In the context of the open metaverse, this would include bring your own assets, consistent user experiences across metaspaces, responsive designs, digital ownership, digital dignity, as well as accessible content for disabilities and impairments. It also includes freedom of choice and unlimited degrees of freedom that allow creators and builders to decide what the metaverse will ultimately look like. So we are nearing the end of the presentation, but I wanted to make this a quick pit stop here on this journey to present Tony Parisi's 7 rules of the metaverse. I'll go over them for those of you who are not familiar with them, but I think these are words to live by as we design and build the open metaverse. He states the following 7 rules. Rule 1, there is only one metaverse. Rule 2, the metaverse is for everyone. Rule 3, nobody controls the metaverse. Rule 4, the metaverse is open. Rule 5, the metaverse is hardware independent. Rule 6, the metaverse is a network. And Rule 7, the metaverse is the internet. And in light of our discussion on the need for ethics in the open metaverse, I would propose the addition of another rule to complete the list, which would be Rule 8, the metaverse is an ethical and equitable space. So we should not allow technological determinism to dictate our cultural values and social norms. We have an opportunity to establish guiding principles for the development of the open metaverse. And now is the time to put a stake in the ground, establish our North Star, and allow core values and morals to guide the design and technology developed to build the open metaverse. So today I present to you the Metaverse Code of Ethics, a code of conduct for the architects of the open metaverse. And it is as follows. 1, promote the well-being of yourself and others. Design for privacy and security and honor confidentiality. Maintain controllability of all technologies, especially AI. Consider all risks and foster public awareness of consequences. Be fair and take action not to discriminate. Let your work be inclusive and representative. Number 2, practice openness and transparency. Invite diverse stakeholder input and encourage discourse. Promote values of autonomy, transparency, explainability, and trustworthiness. 3, honor the work of creators. Respect the work that's required to produce new ideas, inventions, creative works, and computation artifacts. And 4, enforce ethical behavior at all levels. Make ethical reflection and practice the standard. Have a bias for action when the code is not adhered to. So I'd like to thank you very much for joining me today on this session on the importance of an open metaverse. If you would like to view the materials referenced in today's presentation and access more resources on the open metaverse, please visit openmv.org and join the open metaverse community. If you want to reach out to me directly, please add me on LinkedIn. I'd like to leave you with this quote from Ayn Rand. She once said, "Every aspect of Western culture needs a new code of ethics, a rational ethics, a precondition of rebirth." And with that, be well, my friends, and remember, you have the power to define what the open metaverse will be. Thank you very much.